Mahamohagrahagraseka karmane. Offering my Sashtanga Pranamas to the entire Guru Parampara of this Pitha. In these 2 days, which is a horribly insufficient time to completely explore the intricacies of Panchadashi, today, in these 2 sessions that will run until about 1 o'clock, we will be looking at 2 chapters. The first will be Panchakosha Viveka, it is the 3rd chapter. The fourth, the next one will be its successor, the Dvaita Viveka. So the Panchadashi is named because it is consisting of 15 chapters. These 15 chapters are split into 3 pentads. So 1 to 5 are Vivekas, then 6 to 10 are Deepas, and then the last 5 are Anandas. So the Viveka is meant for us to discriminate between what is real and what is not, what is absolute and what is not, what is necessary and what is not. So there are many ways of going about doing this, and we will see today that this discrimination is not just separating 2 things, but the discrimination is actually of the nature wherein we end up with what it is that we need. Right? When we say we separate the rice from the husk, the point is not that we now know that the rice is separate and the husk is separate. The point is for us to take the rice. So, in the same way, the point of having this Viveka between what is Sat and Asat, or the Viveka between Brahman and the Jagat, is such that we can end up with Brahman. Right? So that is also one thing that we will be seeing. And once again we have to remain eternally grateful to Vidyaranya Mahaswami, who besides all the socio-political reforms that he undertook in the day, he gave us texts of such a varied nature. There are of course the scholarly texts, the Veda Bhashya, the entire Veda Bhashya, all of those are there. But this Panchadashi is of a nature wherein, the Viveka Chudamani is also of the same nature wherein someone who is just setting foot into Vedanta can use this Panchadashi to make sense of Vedanta. Someone who has finished studying Vedanta can use Panchadashi to further bolster their understanding of Vedanta. So the Viveka Chudamani is also of the same nature, wherein this text will reflect whoever is reading it. So it will ensure that whoever is reading it will get something out of it, regardless of what their level is. So it takes, in fact, I would argue that even more so than a scholarly commentary, it takes even more skill to write a text in this nature, because it is a much more, a broader audience that is presented here. So without further ado, we will start off with the Panchakosha Viveka. So what is the point of talking about the fact that Brahman is separate from the Panchakoshas? So if we are if we have come this far, we know generally what the Panchakoshas are. Right? There are 5 sheaths that cloud the Atma from our, that shield the Atma from being experienced. The outermost being Annamaya, the Annamaya Kosha, and then in order going within Annamaya, within the Annamaya is Pranamaya, within the Annamaya is Manomaya, within the Manomaya is the Vijnanamaya, within the Vijnanamaya is the Anandamaya Kosha, within that is the Atma Chaitanya. So when we say koshas, it is not, when we say that this is inside that, this is inside that, it is not like there is a lotus, you peel back 2 petals, then one more, there's Russian dolls are there, right? You open one doll, there will be one more doll inside. That is not exactly what we mean. When we say Anyantara Atma Pranamayaha, Anyantara Atma Manomayaha, Anyantara Atma Vijnanamayaha, Anyantara Atma Anandamayaha, right? That is how the Upanishad presents it. This Anyaha, there is one more entity, that is Antaraha. It is within. When the Upanishad says within, what we mean by that, it is more subtle. That is what we mean. It is not like, if you cross this first the Annamaya Kosha, you will come to the Pranamaya Kosha. That is not exactly how it is. It is that one is more subtle. So that is why in the outset, we have this Annamaya Kosha. It is called, so the word Mayat, this Mayat in the end, is a suffix. We have many suffixes in Sanskrit, right? For example, if this Tva, this Tva is one thing, right? If you say something Guni is something, that Gunitva is the quality of being like that. Bali means someone who is strong. Balitva is the quality of someone who is strong. Vidvat means a scholar. Vidvatva means the nature of being a scholar, right? So there are certain suffixes. This particular suffix called mayat indicates something called a vikara. So a vikara is a product, it is an effect. So a pot is a vikara of mud in that sense. The cloth is a vikara of threads. So this word mayat indicates a vikara. So this body, this physical body is called the pranamaya kosha, the annamaya kosha, because it is a product of the food that we take in. So anything that grows based on the food that we take in is the annamaya kosha. So whatever is sustained through food is that. Then if you go in, then you have the pranamaya kosha. There is one more part of our identity that we feel, wherein the vayu that we take in. So it is not the food that we eat, but the air that we take in and its vital force. So here prana is not just the air that we take in, right? Because although prana and air is what we might find in the dictionary, you have to look at the sense that it is used in our shastras, right? So these pranas are fivefold: prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana. So we know that prana is meant to go up, apana is meant to go down, samano nabhi samstitaha. Then one of these is supposed to be responsible for digesting food. So clearly air is not meant to help us digest food, right? I mean, even the Indian mind 1000 years back would have known this. And then if you take the upavayus, the naga, kurma, krikara, devadatta, these are meant what helps us blink, what helps us vomit, what helps us sneeze. These are also the functions of the vayu. So it is clear that the vayu that is being discussed here as prana is not just the breeze that blows when you turn on the fan. Right? This is the vayu which, when taken in, allows the body to perform its internal functions. Right? There is some aspect of the fact that when oxygen goes into your body, the body can function only if that is the case. So that nature of vayu is discussed as the prana. Right? Otherwise there is no connection between a breeze and the food being digested in our body. But this is the connection because vayu is not merely the physical air that we see. Then the manomaya kosha and vijnanamaya kosha are there. This is a bit confusing for people because manomaya is the manas, vijnanamaya is the buddhi. The manas and the buddhi are more or less the same thing. So what is the difference? We will see that also. But simply put, one antahkarana, that is to say the inner organ, right, the mind, whatever we call the mind, is performing two functions. One wherein it sees things as they are, one in where it tries to relate to things. Right? There are two ways of saying. I can say this is a book. I can also say this is my book. I can say that is a tree. I can say that tree is far away from me. Right? So we see things in two ways. There is the object on its own and how we relate to the object. So when you see the object on its own, it is called buddhi. When we seek to relate with it, it is called manas. Right? That is the more. This is a very abstract definition. The line that you will usually hear is sankalpa vikalpatmakam manaha. The mind is the mind when it decides when it wants to or not want to do something. Nishchayatmika buddhi. When it takes a decision, it is called buddhi. So if we look at the implications of this, it ends up that when you see something as is, or when you see only the object, it is the buddhi. When you seek to relate with the object, it becomes the manas. So these two are also there. Then even more than this is the anandamaya kosha. If the previous two koshas were confusing, this is even more so. Because we are told that Brahman is Satchidananda, the Atma is Ananda Swarupa, and now you are saying that Anandamaya is a kosha within which the actual Atma is there. Right, so which is it? Is Brahman within Ananda or is Ananda Brahman? So this Anandamaya kosha is not the Ananda that is Brahman. It is the what we call Laukika Ananda. It is the happiness that is experienced of objects. So although there is only one source of Ananda in the world, right? Just as we say that existence, there is only one source. So although we may say that this book exists or this tree exists or this house exists, the existence is drawn from Brahman. Just as when we say that, if we say that the ocean is wet, where is the wetness of the ocean coming from? It is coming from the wetness of water. Because water is wet, the ocean is wet. Because the ocean is a product of water. In the same way, if we say that the tree exists, the pot exists, the ground exists, this quality of existence is drawn from Brahman. Because the point is that there can only be one source of existence. Right? You have to, when you trace back the effect to its cause. At some point, you have to end up with a singular cause. Right? You cannot. There are 10 branches of a tree. If you trace all of them back, you will end up with one source that all the branches have come from. Right? So the point is also that but then you will say the next tree also has separate branches that have a separate cause. But then if you trace that back, these two trees are coming from the ground. The ground is one. So the point is that when you trace all causes back to their ultimate cause, you must necessarily, by the dictum that there can only be one cause, you have to end up at one singular cause for the universe. Right? So from there itself, this Chaitanya and etc. all come. So in the same way, just as we say that there is only one root for Chaitanya in this Jagat, there can also only be one root for Ananda as well. Because the point is that Chaitanya and Ananda are not separate. So all Anandas that we experience in this Jagat are fleeting glimpses or fleeting reflections perhaps of that Ananda. Which is why the Upanishad says, Anyani etasyeva anandasya anyani bhutani matram upajivanti. Whatever Ananda it is, that is Brahman's nature. All beings subsist off of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of that. Right? And that is what we get again in the Taittiriya. Right? You start off with what a Manusha Ananda is. What is the Ananda the greatest Ananda that can be experienced by a human. Then 10 times that is some Gandharva Ananda, 10 times that Deva Gandharva Ananda. You keep going 100 times until you get to the Brahmananda. So the point is not that if you have 10 and then you put some exponent to it, you will end up with Brahmananda. The point of saying 100 is to say that it is unfathomably greater. So in this way, the Anandamaya Kosha is our identity with these fleeting Anandas that are mere reflections of the actual Ananda. The main Ananda is obviously within that. So in that, it is like the face is reflected in the mirror. There is a face there. The reflection in the mirror is also a face, but it is not the actual face. Right? In the same way, the Anandamaya Kosha is akin to that reflection. The Ananda is akin to the actual face. So in this way, we have these 5 koshas. Why are they called koshas? Koshas do 2 things. They cover the sword from view. So kosha is a scabbard in English, that is the word, right? What you put the sword back into. So it covers and also envelopes. Right? It does 2 things. It is both around the sword, and it prevents the weapon from being visible also. So these koshas do exactly that. It envelopes it in the sense that only after stripping away the kosha will we be left with the Atma. Right? What enveloping does not mean that the koshas are bigger than Atma, because obviously Atma is the greater entity. But what we mean by enveloping is that our identity of who we actually are is surrounded by this. So we see that I am the body. Get rid of the body, you have I am. So in that sense, this concept of I am is covered by the body. That is one thing. The second thing is Acharaka. It is because of this body that we end up not experiencing what the I is. When we say that I am this body, theoretically I and body both should be experienced. But we do not experience the I separately. We are only looking at the body. So the kosha does both of these things. It both envelops it and shrouds it from view. That is why these are called koshas. The point is that you have to get rid of these koshas such that you can understand the Atma. Now when we say get rid of the kosha, it means that we should all still remain with our sthula sharira by the end of this lecture. Right? The point is not that 50 Atmas will now walk out of this when we have to go home. Right? What we mean by Viveka is you discriminate between them, and the hope is that the understanding will lead you to, before you have realized the Atma, at least lead your life in a different way, and then once you have realized this Atma, the experience itself will be different. Such that, again the same rope snake example we'll be seeing a lot. You have seen the rope and you thought it was a snake. So until then you will be leading your life in one way. Let us not go there. Going there is dangerous. Then later someone tells you, it is not a snake, it is a rope. So then you say, even if I go there, it is okay. I have not yet seen that it is a rope. My memory of seeing it as a snake still persists, but since he has told it is a rope, I can trust that it is still a rope, and therefore I can now lead my life in a slightly different way. I can go there. I do not have to be scared anymore. For Naga Panchami, I have to go to a different place to put the milk. All of this we can think about. In the same way, having the Panchakosha Viveka will, in our stage, at least allow us to start contemplation about where the locus of identity lies. Obviously, for a jnani, something like Sadashiva Brahmendra, in the highest case, we know that story where he was just walking. That Mughal emperor or someone called him. He didn't even hear him. So he cut off the hand. He kept walking. So this is because he is in the state wherein he is not even paying attention. It is like if I am walking and someone cuts off a piece of the cloth from behind. I will probably not notice because my experiential identity is not tied to my cloth. Right. Whereas if someone cuts off our arm, we will not only stop but turn around also. So Sadashiva Brahmendra did not do that because for this very reason that his identity, his sense of self is no longer rooted in the panchakoshas, but it is rooted in what is the ultimate indweller of those panchakoshas. So in our stage and in the higher stage, this is the point of why this chapter is there. So that is exactly where the Granthakara has started. Guhahitam Brahma yat tat panchakosha vivekatah bodhum shakyam tatah kosha panchakam pravivichyate. Brahman is described as guhahitam. One more thing is there in these, one more speciality of Panchadashi is that Vidyaranya Mahaswami will not only tell you the Vedantic Vishaya or the Vedantic topic, but he will also tell you where he is taking it from. So the starting off with Guha Hitam Brahma is, for those of us who have studied the Upanishad, immediately reminds us of Yoveda Paramam Guhayam Nihitam. Right? That is the Soshnute Sarvan Kaman Saha Brahmana Vipashtiteti. So that Yoveda Nihitam Guhayam Paramam Vyoman, right? That is it, right? So Yoveda Nihitam Guhayam. This Brahman is being discussed as though it is concealed deep within a cave. Right? So what this cave is and all, Brahma Sutras and all have discussed that. But the point is that it is within something. So therefore, Panchakosha Vivekatah Bodhum Shakyam. If you get rid of the cave, you will be left with whatever is inside the cave. It is that simple. So one more thing is that by saying Guhahitam, Vidyaranya Mahaswami is reminding us, or he is giving a hint that this Panchakosha Viveka is going to follow the Taittiriya Upanishad. That is one hint that is being given. That is why the speakers yesterday must have told you sometimes he will just include the mantra as it is as a shloka. Some Upanishad mantras will just be put as, so those people who don't know that Upanishad will think that it is a shloka Vidyaranya Mahaswami's composition. Same Gita also, we will see in the next one. The Gita shlokas also will be there in the middle. Those who have not read the Gita will think that this shloka is written by Vidyaranya Mahaswami. But he includes it in the middle to show that I am saying A and B, what is told in the Gitas and the Upanishads fits perfectly between A and B. That is the point of including that as is, verbatim. So here, this is going to follow the Taittiriya Upanishad, because one more thing is there that we have to talk about. Each Upanishad presents Brahman in a different way. First of all, these Upanishads are twofold. The main Upanishads, that is to say the mainstream Upanishads that Purvacharyas have discussed the most, are Upanishads in the true sense, wherein they are related to the Jnana Kanda. The main focus is knowledge, nature of the Atma. There are some more Upanishads which are devoted to Upasana. That is to say, you will see, for example, this Mahopanishad is there. It deals with the Upasana of Mahavishnu. The same way, this Kalarudra Upanishad is there. That deals with the Upasana of Rudra. And then so many Upanishads are there. Nrisimhatapaniya, these are all Ganesha, Atharvashirsha. All of these are Upanishads that deal with the Upasana of a Devata. So why do we call them as Upanishads? Because through the Upasana of that Devata, they are giving us a line into the proper Jnana Kanda. So although, for example, Ganesha Atharvashirsha starts with Namaste Ganapataye, it is going into Tvameva Pratyaksham Brahmasi. So it is through the guise of Ganesha. The point is that Brahman. But it is presented, that Brahman is presented as Ganesha in this Upanishad. In the Mahopanishad also, it will start with Eko Have Narayana Asit, Na Brahma Nesha Naha. It will start with that. In the end, it will end up talking about the nature of Narayana as Paramatma. So the point of these Upanishads is, by introducing us to Upasana of Paramatma, it will take us into what Paramatma's true nature is. But the main Upanishads, when I say main, it means that the Jnana focused are the Dashopanishads, the ones that Bhagavad-pada wrote a bhashya for, and even the Acharyas of other Sampradayas, the Upanishads that they also took as the primary ones are the Isha, Kena, Katha, Prashna, Mundaka, Mandokya, Taittiriya, Aitareya, Brihadaranyaka, Chandogya. These 10 are the Upanishads that are Upanishads in the truest sense of the word. So when we discuss these Upanishads, each Upanishad will present Brahman in a different way. For example, Kena Upanishad is there. How does Kena Upanishad? It's a very small Upanishad, but Keneshatam Paditam Preshatam Manaha, Kena Prana Prathama Preti Yuktaha, Keneshatam Vachimimam Vadanti, Chakshushrotrang Kaudevo Yunakti. Who is it that allows this manas to function? Who is it that allows the eye to function? Who is it that allows the speech to function? Manaso Manaha, Vachoha Vacham, Chakshush Chakshuho, Shrotrasya Shrotram, Manaso Manaha. He is the manas of the manas, the eye of the eye, the mind of the mind. So this Upanishad is meant to show us Brahman through the fact that you have all these indriyas that are working. Figure out what is impelling them into action. Then you have the Ishavasya. Here is the Ishavasya Midam Sarvam. Right? This, you see a Jagat around you. Know that Ishvara is the Antaryami of this Jagat. It will start from there. Then you have Taittiriya Upanishad. This is a bit longer, so there are more things in it. But the main part is the second part, which is Anandavalli. And because this same concept of the Panchakoshas is repeated in both the Anandavalli, the second part, and the Bhruguvalli. So here the point is that you have these Panchakoshas that you experience as yourself every day. Know that the Atma is separate, but within all of this. So that is how the Taittiriya Upanishad does it. Then the Chandogya is there. Within Chandogya and Brihadaranyaka are the biggest of these. They are massive compared to the other Upanishads. But mainly when we think about Chandogya, we remember that story of Shvetaketu, wherein the Tattvamasi Upadesha happens. So there how is Brahman presented? There Brahman is presented as the substratum of the Jagat. So the examples are given. Yatha ekena krishnayasena vijñātena sarvam krishnayasam vijñātam syat. If you know iron, if you know the true nature of iron, you will know everything that is made of iron. Right? Yatha ekena mritpindena sarvam mridmayam vijñātam syat. Vācāramhanam vikaro namadheyam mrityaketeva satyam. If you know the nature of mud, you have known the nature of everything that is made up out of mud. So everything that is made up out of mud, what is that thing? It is not different from mud. Right? The pot and plate and all of these are just names. The mud has a particular shape and therefore you have given it a name. There is nothing separate from the mud. The pot is not some other entity. The mud itself in a particular shape is called a pot. So in this way, if you have known the mud, you have known the pot. Then what is the pot? Vikaro namadheyam. The pot is just a name. The pot is not even mud. The pot is just a name that you have given to the mud. So if you know this, then you will know Aitadatmimidam sarvam. In the same way, this entire Jagat is just a vivarta. It is the changing, it is one more form of Brahman. So in the same way, just as the pot is just a name, so too this Jagat, these names and forms we see are just namesake. So there just as it is Mrityakatyeva satyam. Mrityaka, the mud is the truth of that pot. In the same way, Etadatmimam sarvam tat satyam sa atma. So that is the Paramatma. And then of course Tattvamasi, how that is, there is on the later part of the Upanishad. So in this way, in this place the Upanishad is discussing Paramatma as the substratum of the Jagat. So each Upanishad provides us a different perspective of this Atma. So the beauty lies in the fact that all of these different forms of teaching us about Atma will end up teaching us about the Atma in the end. And then there is one more thing that we have to say, that if you look at this, for example, Taittiriya, these Panchakoshas will be 90% of the Upanishad. In the end, Atma will only be 10%. So already we are saying that in Veda, Karma Kanda is 98% of the Veda and only 2% is Jnana Kanda. Again, within this Jnana Kanda, 90% is just again talking about Panchakosha, Jagat, what happened with the Jagat. And only 2% is talking about what the actual Atma is. So that also, why that is the case is also discussed in this. We'll see that when we come there. So now when we see these Panchakoshas, Vidyaranya Mahaswami has told there, Dehad Abhyantaraf Pranaha. Exactly what this nature of being inner, right? From the Deha, the Prana is inner. Pranad Abhyantaram Manaha. The Manas is internal to the Prana. Tatah Karta. Within the Prana, Manas is the Karta. That is to say, the doer. Within the Karta is Tato Bhokta, the enjoyer. Guha Seyam Parampara. So the Guha that the Atma is in is not just one entity, but it is this sequence of entities. So the Deha is the Annamaya Kosha, the gross body, the Sthula Sharira. Abhyantaraf Pranaha, we discussed what the Prana is. Pranad Abhyantaram Manaha, we discussed what the mind also is. The mind is more subtle than that. Tatah Karta, the doer, the sense of doership is internal to the sense of wanting. So that is one thing. Within that is the Bhokta, the experiencer of these Anandas. Right? We said that all these Laukika Anandas are experienced. So the experiencer of those Anandas is within that. Within that is the Ananda itself. So in that way, these 5 have been laid out. So, so now one by one, the text will now show us how the Atma cannot be each of these koshas. It is a very straightforward proposition, but we'll just go through it quickly. Pitrubhuktannajad viryat jataha annenaiva vardhate dehaha saha annamayaha na atma prakchordhvam tadabhavataha. So what is this deha? It came out of the virya of the father based on the food that he had eaten. So the father and the mother have both ingested some food. Through that, some particular parts of their body have come about. When those two unite, it forms one new body for one more jiva to inhabit. So where has this body come from? Anna. If you trace it back to the root cause, it is Anna. Therefore, this body is called Annamaya. Therefore, this until now the name has been explained. This is not the Atma because Praksha Urdhvan Tadabhavataha. Before this union of the father's and mother's seed came about, this body was not there. The second that this body dies and the sun sends it to the cemetery to be burnt, this body is also not there. But Atma, we have to say, persists. Because Atma is Nitya. We know this through the Shastra. So therefore, because the Sthula Sharira does not exist before and after a certain period of time, but Atma must necessarily exist in all 3 periods of time, it follows that these two are separate. Then to the Pranamaya Kosha. One more logic is told there. Purva Janmani Asan Etad Janma Sampadayat Katham Bhavi Janman Yasan Karma Nabhunjiti Sanchitam. In this body, we are experiencing the fruits of karma from the second that we are born. Right? So, from the second that you come out of the womb, you are experiencing hot, cold, sukha, dukkha, hunger, thirst. All of this is there. So, if you are experiencing something, you will not experience something without there being a karma for it. Only if a karma has been done, will you experience the fruit of it. You will not experience anything that is not a fruit of karma. So, if you are experiencing something with this body from the very second that this body has come about, and you have not done any karma with this body, it follows then that someone has done some karma with some other body that you are experiencing. It also makes no sense to say that I am experiencing the fruit of something that someone else did. So it follows that you only have done something with a different body, you are just experiencing it in this. So the fact that experience is there in this body from the start, if we take the law of karma as given, then it follows that you must be separate because you are experiencing something in this body that cannot have been obtained by this body. So you must have done something prior to this. Therefore, you must have existed prior to this body. So only if you do something will you experience something. So if you do satkarma, you will experience sukha. If you do papa, you will experience dukkha. So if you are experiencing sukha, you will not experience sukha for no reason. You will experience sukha only if there is a prior karma that you have done, that is punya. In the same way, you will not experience papa for no reason. Any dukkha for no reason. If you experience dukkha, it by definition must be the result of some ill action that has been performed before. So that is there are no experiences that are random. Each experience is arranged. That is how it is. So that is why the Annamaya Sharira cannot be the Atma. Then the Pranamaya Kosha. Purne Dehe Balam Yachan Akshanam Yaf Pravartakaha. What does this Vayu do? This Prana do? It fills the body, gives it strength. Then it also Akshanam Pravartakaha. It allows the Indriyas, the senses, to function. Vayuhu Pranamayaha. Therefore this Vayu is called Pranamaya. Nasa Atma. It is not the Atma because Chaitanya Varjanat. The air that we take in is not sentient. Right? Even the functions that we said that are performed in the body do not necessarily have to be performed by a sentient being. Right? If you drop something into acid, it breaks down. You do not need a conscious entity to do that. If we say that this Vayu is causing food to digest too, therefore you don't need the Vayu to be sentient to do that. So Atma has to be sentient. So therefore this Vayu cannot be Atma. Then within that, if you go to the Manomaya, Ahantam mamatam dehe gehadaucha karoti yaha. Whoever it is that ascribes I-ness and minus to the body and the house. So ahamtam dehe, mamatam gehe. That is how it is split. So although we are not the body, and although the Atma has frankly no relation with relatives and the house and clothes and objects and all. For some reason or the other, we are saying I am the body, and we are saying this is my house. So whatever it is that is instilling that sense of I-ness in the body and instilling the sense of minus in a house and our belongings and possessions and all, that is called the manas. That is so exactly what you said. Whatever it is that ensures that this Atma, which is otherwise asanga, ends up feeling that it is related to things that it actually has no relation to. That is the manas. That also is not the Atma, because kamadhyavasthaya bhrantaha nasa atma manomayaha. So it is not the manomaya because all the things that it has put its I-ness in are not actually things that are I or my for that nature. Nothing that it feels is mine is actually mine, because the concept of mine itself does not exist. Right? Only if, so I can say that this hand belongs to the body because this hand is part of the body. But otherwise, even if for us to understand the cloth and the body, the cloth does not actually belong to the body. If the cloth belongs to the body, then no one other than the body should be able to use it. However, that is not the case. I can wear this pancha, my friend can wear this pancha, my father can wear it, my son can also wear it. So therefore the relationship between this cloth and my body is not actually a possessive relationship. It is a temporary confluence of two things. Right? That is, when we say that all these are kshanika, that is actually what we mean. The relationship between an object and the experiencer is a very fleeting one, and therefore there is no actual ownership that the experiencer has over the object that is being experienced. Right? Only if it is part of you can you say that it is actually yours. Nothing that you experience is actually part of you. That is the simple proposition that we have. So because that is the nature of the I-ness that this manas is advocating for, this I-ness is not actually a real I-ness or a real minus. Therefore this cannot be also the absolute Atma. Then Leena Suptau Vapur Bodhe Vyapnuyat Anakhagraga Chichayopeta Dhihi Na Atma Vijnanamaya Shabdabhak. So Vijnanamaya is Buddhi. This Buddhi is also not the Atma, because in Sushupti it is not there. If it is there in Sushupti, it should be observable. However, it is not observable during Sushupti. There is nothing that it does. There is no even byproduct, even after Sushupti, wherein you can trace it back and say, this happened only because the Buddhi was still functioning. There are no one wakes up from Sushupti and says, in deep sleep, I got a fantastic idea for a new thing. Right? No authors get ideas for books in Sushupti. Maximum Swapna, usually Jagrat, sometimes Sushupti, sometimes Swapna, but no one gets ideas in Sushupti. Right? So that is because the Buddhi and the Manas are not functioning there. So if they are not there, obviously, as we said, then they cannot be the Atma, which is supposed to be Nitya.
Turiya and Sushupti both are same,
Turiya is beyond Sushupti. In Sushupti, Ajnana is still there. In Turiya, Ajnana also will not be there. Because in Sushupti, we are happy, but we do not know that we are happy. That is also there. We are aware that we are happy only after we wake up. Right? So, if to give one simile, it is like we walk into a room where the fan is on. We are not realizing that the fan is on. Someone comes off and stops the fan, only then we realize that the fan was on, because now we are hot. In the same way in Sushupti also, we are happy. We are not aware that we are happy because Ajnana is still there. After you wake up, you realize, I was happy until now, because now again it is Monday and I have to go to office. Until now it was very nice. Right? So, in this way, the Sushupti, Ananda is experienced, but it is still experienced through the veil of Ajnana, which is why in that time we are not aware. The yogi or the jnani will experience that without even Ajnana. He is happy and he knows it. So, sometimes he will clap his hands. That song is there, no? I don't know if that is there in India. If you are happy and you know it, clap your hands. So, then next one is the kartritva karanatvabhyam vikriyeta antarindriyam vijnana manasi antar bahishchaite parasparam. So that is what is being described. Vijnana and the manas. Manas goes out, vijnana stays in. So the sense of doership is ascribed to the buddhi. This is an inner thing, wherein I am now acting. The action is rooted in the body. The fact that I am now going to act, therefore, is also rooted in the body. I am acting for that is external. Therefore, you need the manas to associate with something outside the body. So, both of these are antar bahishcha. The buddhi acts inward, the manas acts externally. Then we have now put this aside. Now we have come to the Anandamaya Kosha. Kachid antarmukha vrittihi. There is some nature of ourself that is now inner. Ananda pratibimba bhak. It is the reflection of Ananda. Punya bhoge. When does it give Ananda? When the fruit of our punyas are being experienced. Because there is a difference between the Sat and Chit aspect of Brahman and the Ananda aspect of Brahman. Sat we experience without difference everywhere. Right? The pot is, the plate is, the food is, the book is, the water is, the ground is, all of this we experience is without difference everywhere. The bhasate, the pot is shining. Shining means available for perception. This also we experience everywhere. However, Ananda is not experienced everywhere. Right? The fact that this is pleasing, just as we say this exists is coming from Brahman. If Brahman's nature is also Ananda, then in the same way everything should also be pleasing. Just as everything exists because Brahman is existence, just because everything is perceptible because Brahman is Chaitanya, in the same way then everything should also be very pleasing because Brahman is Ananda. However, that is not the case because in the middle our Antahkarana has inserted itself and said that, one second, I am going to redefine what Ananda is for you. So the Ananda of Brahman is very different from the Ananda that we have in objects. Because the Ananda of objects is the Ananda of experiencing something else. The Ananda of Atma is the Ananda of not needing to experience anything else. There is a marked difference in the way that these are. So because we have ended up redefining Ananda such that we can act. See, existing and being available for perception does not change how we act. However, whether something is pleasing or not does indeed define how we act. So it is because we have redefined what Ananda means that Ananda is not experienced by us. The Jnani, however, knowing that Paramatma is Sarvavyapi, will be able to experience Paramatma as Paramatma everywhere and therefore is always happy. So that is the difference between our Ananda and the Ananda of a Jnani, which is why we say that the Anandamsha is Tirohita. Tirohita means veiled, covered. So the Ananda is not experienced as is everywhere. So that is why the Ananda that we are talking about here in the Anandamaya Kosha, we have restricted only to Punya, the experience of Punya. Because obviously, if someone is poking you with a needle, you will not say this is also the Anandamaya Kosha. Right? It is not that. So, but when you say I am happy, that happiness that you experience is the Anandamaya Kosha because it is not that Ananda per se, but it is a reflection of that, a seeming reflection of that Ananda. So that is also not counted as the Atma because Bhoga Shantau Nidra Rupena Liyate. The Ananda of experiencing another object will obviously by definition last only as long as that object is available for perception. Right? There is no guarantee that the Ananda will last even as long as the object lasts. It will last as long as you are interacting with the object. Right? So our friend is very dear to us. He causes us some happiness. It is not that you will experience that happiness as long as he lives. You will experience that happiness only as long as he is with you, you are talking to him. The second he goes home, that Ananda is gone. So in this way, because this Ananda goes when the object goes, again this too is understood to be impermanent and therefore it cannot be the Atma. Kadachitkattvataha. This Ananda is Kadachitka. That means Kadachita. Only every now and then it comes and goes. Therefore this cannot be the Bimbabhuta Ananda. Right? That is the point of a reflection, right? It is fleeting and temporary. It looks like the original, but it is not that, and it is temporary. I see my reflection in a mirror. My face will persist even after I cover the mirror, but the reflection will go. In the same way, this Anandamaya Kosha will stay only as long as there is a medium to be reflected in. The second that medium goes, the Ananda will also go. Which is why in Sushupti, you do not experience any object with happiness. Right? That is the case there. So, then, there is also a nature of perception. Swayameva, I am skipping some shlokas in the middle because we cannot do every shloka. Swayameva anubhutitvat vidyate nanubhavyata jnatri jnanantara bhavat agneyo natvasattaya. There is one interesting nature of the Atma that is discussed later on. Here, it is now being discussed that The Atma is avedya, but always known. Avedya means that which cannot be known, but it is always known. This is a very interesting thing. So the Atma cannot be known, which means that it is not the object of experience. Right? Vedya means the object. So in Sanskrita, how this will be is Vedya, just to give you a taste of how people will explain it. Vedya has two parts, Vid dhatu and Nyat pratyaya. Nyat pratyaya. So Vid means to know, the action of knowing. Nyat means Shakyartha, the possibility. So Vedya means that possibility means the object. Karmatva will be the meaning. So now the object of knowing means negation. It is not the object of knowing. That's how they will explain the word. So it is not the object of perception. But it is still known. How is it known if it is not the object of perception? That is the question, right? This is akin to saying that the sun is not illuminated, but it always shines and it is seen. The sun is not illuminated by anything else, but it is visible. It is akin to saying the same thing. So it itself is that. It is not illuminated by anything. That is what is being taught. The swayameva anubhutitvat. Experience is the nature of this Atma. Therefore, anubhavyata na. It is not experienced. It is experience. However, experience also is known. This, the Kutastha and Sakshi were talked about yesterday. So in the Kutastha, the speaker would have talked about this, right? This is a pot. I know the pot. When you say this is a pot, what is the object of that perception? The pot. When you say I know the pot, what is the object of perception? I. Right? You, like if you say ayam ghataha, means the ghata is the object. Aham ghatagnyanavan. Then the object is aham. What is the prakara? Prakara means what is the attribute that you are grasping. When you say ayam ghataha, it is actually this. There is something in front of you. You are understanding that to be a ghata. Right? So ayam is what we call the uddeshya. Ghata is vidheya. So there is something to which you are ascribing something. Right? The flower is white. You have grasped the flower. You are now ascribing whiteness to it. In the same way, if you say this is a pot, this you have understood, you are ascribing potness to it. In the same way, if you say I know the pot, you have been grasped to this entity that is you. You are now applying knower of pot. That is being applied to that. So in this second, what we call anuvyavasaya, the successive knowledge that I know a pot, the knowledge that the pot, this is a pot. The knowledge that succeeds this is I know this pot. So in this knowledge, the object of knowledge is now I. So whatever it is that is grasping that, the fact that a perception has happened is also being grasped. So that is what we are calling the Atma, not the first one that has grasped the pot. Because what is grasping the pot? The buddhi. Right? So this aham is imposed on the buddhi, which is why the buddhi grasps the pot. Then later we say my buddhi has grasped the pot, then there is someone apart from the buddhi also that is cognizing this. So it is that we are calling Atma, which is why we are saying that Atma is of the nature of experience. Anything that is experienced is an object. Atma exists as is. That is the difference. Then Madhuryadi Swabha.
Just the last few points.
It will be described in the next couple of shlokas. Madhuryadi Swabhavanam Anyatra Swagunarpinam Swasmin Tadarpanapeksha no Nacha Asti Anyadarpakam. So the example they are giving is sweetness. Sugar is sweet. So by putting sugar in something else will become sweet. If you put sugar in suji, it will become halwa. If you put sugar in milk, it will become payasa. If you melt sugar, it will become the paka. In Telugu we call it pakam, bellam pakam or something like that. I don't know. Syrup, that kind of thing. So this syrup or the halwa or the payasa, these are also sweet. But their sweetness came from sugar. Sugar, where did it get its sweetness from means? Okay, we will say some chemical combination, but for now, there is no other object that has given sugar its sweetness. That is what is being told. Madhuryadi Swabhavanam. Sugar has the nature of being sweet. Anyatra Swagunarpinam. So it will give its guna of Madhurya to other things. But Nacha Asti Anyadarpakam. There is nothing that is giving it its sweetness. Right? So sugar is sweetness. That is how we have to understand it here. In the same way, Arpakantara Rahityepi Astyesham Tat Swabhavata. Although See, the point here is that everything that we see must have come from somewhere. We are starting from this proposition. So if this wood is hard, this hardness has to be caused by something. It has to come from somewhere. So you trace it back like that. In the same way, in this case of sugar, sweetness is perceived in halwa. This must have come from somewhere. You do your research in one lab on halwa, you will get to the fact that sugar has caused it, because in this halwa there are many things. Suji is there here and elsewhere. However, every suji upma is also being made. Upma is hopefully not sweet, right? But this is sweet. Therefore, the suji is not the cause. Then some cashew nuts will be there. These cashew nuts are here. It is also there in some cashew pakoda will be there. That is not sweet. So therefore, sweetness is not by the cashew. In the end, if you do all of this, ghee is there. Ghee can be put anywhere else, but sweetness is not coming. So you will end up with the fact that at some point, it is the sugar that is causing this to be sweet. Then you will end up with, where is the sugar getting its sweetness from? In this way, you say that everything exists. So this existence must have come from somewhere. You trace this back, there is a leaf. Where did the leaf come from? A branch. Where did the branch come from? The tree. Where did the tree come from? Seed. Where did the seed come from? Some sunlight, mud and all of this. Where did the mud come from? The more particles. If you trace it back, you will come back to the Prithvi Bhuta. Where did this Prithvi come from? Jala. Where did Jala come from? Tejas. You will trace it back to Atmana Akasha Sambhutaha. So in this way, if you trace it back, every svabhava, every nature that is innate in that we see in an object can be traced back to something. It is not necessary that the last thing you have be given that attribute. So the point is that there is something called sweetness. This sweetness will give itself to something else. It is not that an object with sweetness will exist. Because if you say that there is an object with sweetness that exists, then that means that that sweetness is not innate to that object, but it has come. If you say that the object is sweet, only then can you say that this is the source of sweetness from which other sweetness has come. Right? There is that small difference. Only if something is the svabhava of something, can it give it to something else. Right? So even let us say that you have mixed sugar into milk. This milk is now sweet. If you pour this into payasa, payasa will be sweet. We will not say that the cause of the sweetness of the payasa is the milk. Even if the milk has been poured, the payasa is still sweet because of the sugar. Because the sugar's svabhava is sweetness. The sugar does not have sweetness. The sugar is sweetness. There is a small difference there. So it follows that the root of anything will not be the possessor of that attribute, but that attribute itself. Right? Just as we say that something is shiny. It is shining because there is sunlight falling on it. Why is the sun shining means there is no answer to that. The sun is of the nature of effulgence. Right? In the same way, if we say that these panchakoshas exist, this quality of existence, you will trace it back. You will not trace it back to an object that has existence. You will trace it back to existence. That is why we call it Sat. Right? That is why that name is being given, or Satyam. That is why it is being called that. So that is what they are telling. Swayam jyotihi bhavatyesha puraha asmad bhasate khilat tameva bhantam anveti tasya bhasa bhasyate jagat tad bhasa bhasyate jagat. This also you must have realized, right? Tasya bhasa sarvamidam vibhati. Or yadaditya gatam tejo jagat bhasayate khilam yat chandramasi yat chagno tat tejo vidhi mamakam. Right? In Gita, same thing is told. So when we say therefore that all lights are not Swayam Jyoti, but Atma is Swayam Jyoti, we mean the same thing. That concept that if you keep tracing it back, you will come back to that is exactly what Bhagavad Pada has done in the Ekashloki. Right? What is the Ekashloki? Kim Jyotistava Bhanuman. What is allowing you to see in the day? We say the sun. Ratro in the night, then Pradeepadikam, the moon or any lamps. Okay, what is allowing you to see them? So, some other object is being illuminated by the moon or a lamp. What is allowing the moon or the lamp to be illuminated? Kim Jyotihi Akhyave Chakshu. Because you have an eye, you are able to see those. Why is the eye able to see? Because when you close your eyes also, you are able to see some things in your mind. So therefore it follows that the mind is actually illuminating this. Chakshu. Atra kim Chakshustasya nimila kim dhihi. The buddhi. Dhiyo darshana kim. You are able to say, right, my mind is illuminating something. What is illuminating the mind for you? What is making the mind ready for perception? Aham. I, because I am saying my mind. I am focusing on my mind now. So I is separate. Tataha bhavan paramakam jyotihi. Therefore, you are jyoti. Right? Now you are not asking what is your jyoti. you are the Jyoti. That is the difference in how it is told. So it is not necessary that the root object be having effulgence. The root object will end up being effulgence. Right? That is why in the Brihadaranyaka, Swayam Jyotihi, the word Swayam Jyoti is used in the Brihadaranyaka. That is what we mean by when we say Swayam Jyoti. It is not having Prakasha, it is Prakasha. Right? That is also why one more thing you have to understand is when we say that Brahman is Satyam Jnanam Anantam. That is why we cannot say that Brahman has Sat, Brahman has Chit, Brahman has Ananda. If you say has, immediately there is a difference. If you have a difference, it means that there is a separate source. So, and then if you say that no, it is not separate, because this quality has come from Brahman. For the quality to come, let us say you have that, then we will say that Ananda. If we say that Brahman has Ananda, then the source of the Ananda is separate, Brahman is separate. Ananda has come from somewhere and now Brahman has the Ananda. But now if we say that no, Ananda has come from Brahman. If it comes from Brahman, then it must have been Brahman before, right? That is the whole point that we have talked about. For light to illuminate anything, it must have come from somewhere that is light. So then, if Ananda is coming from Brahman, then it follows that then Brahman does not have Ananda, Brahman is Ananda. Only later on it appears as though having Ananda. That is, this having Ananda is exactly what we are saying with the Vishayas.
So I just have a question. They are saying that experience cannot be explained or felt. So is there a difference between physical heart in the body and there is something called as Hridaya Kuhara Madhya? So where is this Ananda exactly felt?
Ananda is felt by the mind. See, if you say, because if you are saying felt by, it is an instrument which is the mind. The experience is the Atma. This experience is grasped with the mind. See, for anything to be grasped, there has to be an instrument. The Atma is not an instrument. If this book is, the book will exist whether I see it or not. But because the eye is there, it is seen. In the same way, even the Ananda that we have just seen about, the reflection Ananda, that is always there. Because Brahman is Sarvavyapi, so Ananda Svabha is Sarvavyapi. But it is cognized only when the mind is there, because the mind has the nature of being able to grasp it. If we say, why can the mind grasp it, then why can the eye see a form? The eye just has a particular nature that allows it to see a form. In the same way, the mind also has an innate ability to see, to perceive certain things. So it is perceived through the mind.
I mean, like, is there a separate heart called as a divine heart?
So the heart, so basically whenever you say, you see Hridaya, this word Hridaya is seen in Shastra. You say Hridaya Kuhara Madhye, Santatan Chintayami, these kinds of things are there, right? So Hridaya means this heart that is pumping blood. Is that the heart? That is not the heart. When we say heart, we mean the manas. Hridaya means manas. So that is why this is not the case that Brahman has Ananda. Brahman, Chit and all are not qualities of Ananda. They are, the Ananda is Brahman's Svabhava is that. That is why this is called the Swarupa Lakshana. See, usually a Lakshana, a defining quality for anything is a quality. It will not be the object itself. Right? If I say what is the defining quality for, I don't know, some tree, you will say having branches. This is not the tree itself. Having branches is not the tree. It is a quality of the tree. But when you come to Brahman, the problem is if you define it like this, you will by definition be defining with something that is either not innate or not permanent. Which is why you then have to say that, okay, I will not give it a quality that is a quality of Brahman. I will define Brahman as what it is. There is a difference between defining it as what it is and defining it through what it has. So Brahman as it is it's Satyam Jnanam Ananda. Then obviously we say that this is not exactly useful for me to understand it in this state. Which is why then we go on to say Janmadhyasya Yataha. Okay, so now I will give you something. The Jagat came from somewhere, right? That. This is like the branches of the tree. The Jagat is impermanent. Therefore, Brahman being the cause of the Jagat also then has to be impermanent. Because when the Jagat does not exist, how can it be the cause of the Jagat? Right? If a lady is there, a child will be born in the future. Will we call her a mother from now itself? So motherhood cannot be her defining quality. However, once the child is born, you can say this child's mother is that entity. So you can point to her through something that she has created. But you cannot define her by something that she has created. In the same way, Brahman has a nature of its own. But the fact is that nature is so subtle, right? We say that is why Anoraniyan, it is the more subtle than even an atom. That is why we have that. But you can point to it through what it has created. The entire Jagat has come out of it. This Jagat is staring us in the face every day. So now through this, you say that Brahman is the cause of the Jagat. Right. So when we say that Brahman is the cause of the Jagat, this is not an innate nature of Brahman, simply because if it is Brahman's innate nature, then it must be true at all periods of time. Obviously, post and pre-Jagat, this cannot be the quality that we use to define Brahman, which is why we define it as Satyam Jnanam Anantam. So that is why you will see in some texts where other people will criticize us saying, these Advaitis say that Ishvara is Mithya, therefore Mayavadi. You will see this statement, right? That is a misportrayal, because we say that Ishvara is Mithya because Ishvaratva is Mithya. That it is like saying, like before, if I give the example, she is a mother. This is not an incorrect statement. But if I say that she has always been a mother, this is now wrong. So her as a mother is not permanent. She is there, but she being a mother is not true at all points of time. In the same way, we say Ishvara is quote unquote Mithya because Ishvara is, the word Ishvara means to control. You will control only as long as there is something to control. Right? If you are unemployed, you will not say he works. Right? There is a difference between working and not working. So in the same way, when this Jagat goes, Ishvara still remains, in the sense that the person who is controlling is still existing. He is no longer a controller, simply because what is being controlled no longer exists. So therefore we see that Brahman as Ishvara is Mithya, but Brahman on its own is Satya. See, when Brahman controls the Jagat, he is called Ishvara. So we say Brahman as Ishvara is Mithya, but Brahman on its own is Satya. All of this vichara comes simply because this Satyam Jnanam Anantam or Ananda is not Brahman's quality, it is Brahman's nature. I am stressing this again because we need to understand what this is. Right? Because otherwise you will be confused as to why this much is being explained. It is important that we note the difference between having Ananda, having existence, having perception versus being consciousness, being existence and being perception. So this being perception is what this Anubhuti is. Right? We said earlier that Atma is Anubhuti, all other objects are Anubhavya, objects of experience. Because this difference is there, we are able to separate Atma from the panchakoshas. So if we understand this, we will also understand Brahman as Ishvara and what it means when we say that. That is why Krishna can say in the Gita, Mattaf parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya. When Krishna says, there is nothing else beside me. Obviously Krishna is standing in front of Arjuna. When chariot is also there, 4 horses are there. What Mattaf parataram means? What does it mean? The point there is Bhagavad Pada writes, Mattaha karanantaram nasti. There is no other cause besides me. Any cause you trace back in the Jagat, it will end up with me only. That is what Krishna is telling in the Gita. So that is what is being pointed out here, that all these things that you see in the Jagat will end up becoming perception, Ananda, consciousness. It will come up to these. These are the things that persist in the Jagat. Everything else we can explain now very easily. So these things that persist through the Jagat are stemming from this Brahma Padartha. That is what is being told. So then, that is being told, that to sum it up in one nice shloka, Sa veti vedyam tat sarvam nanyah tasyasti vedita vidita viditabhyam tat prithak bodhasvarupakam. Nice shloka that has summarized everything that I have told so far. Sa veti vedyam tat sarvam. Every object of perception, it alone knows. Right, so if anything has to be perceived, the Atma has to be there such that perception can happen. So any object that is known, the knower is one, Atma. So sa veti vedyam, anything that is vedya, an object of perception, sa veti, it knows. Nanyaha tasya asti vedita, no one knows it. That is to say, it is not the object of any perception. Vidita viditabhyam tat prithak, therefore it is separate from anything that is known and not known. Vidita and avidita. What do you mean by this? A pot, a cloth, all of these are things that are known. What is something that is not known? The horn of a rabbit, the child of a Vandhyaputra, a flower that has blossomed in the sky. These are things that never exist. This is avidita. This will never be an object of perception. There are things that will be the object of perception. Pot, cloth, tree, ground, sky, these kinds of things. Brahman is separate from both of these. because it exists, it is different from these things that never exist, like the flower in the sky, the horn of a rabbit. Because it is not the object of perception, it is separate from this pot, cloth. Pratibodham hi viditam. In every bodha, in every perception that you have, it is still there. In every cognition that you have, Brahman will be part of that cognition. But it is neither the object of cognition, nor is it something that is never cognized. And this is the a triad of things. The Upanishad actually is telling it in a very beautiful way. If we know what it is saying, we'll appreciate the beauty in it. So now if we say that, if you translate the Upanishad as, it is different from the known and unknown, and it is present in every cognition. This is the verbatim translation. But the meaning is that it is neither an object of perception, nor is it non-existent. It is present in every cognition as the seer. That is the Upanishad says, Nanyatotosti drashta. Nanyaha ataha drashta asti. Ataha, from this Atma, anyaha, a different drashta, cognizer nasti. It is not there. That is why the Upanishad tells that. And that is why everything that exists must necessarily be an object of perception. Okay, that is a separate topic. We'll talk about that later. So, then the fact is, then, if you are saying that it is not the object of perception, how can you say that it exists? There, the Vidyaranya Swami writes nicely, Jihva mesti nava ityuktihi lajjaye kevalam yatha. If someone says that, if someone speaks the words, do I have a tongue? He should be extremely ashamed of himself. Lajjaye, he should be ashamed. In the sense that if he says, do I have a tongue? Only if the tongue is moving can he even say these words. Just as having used the tongue to say these words, you should not use the words to now say, do I have a tongue or not? In the same way, because experience is Brahman, experience is consciousness. I am saying experience a lot. Experience is consciousness. Because consciousness is there, you are able to see, I see a pot, I see a cloth, I see this place, I see a book. Now then if you say, does experience actually exist? I mean, it is the same thing, right? That is why Bhagavad says also in the Sutra Bhashya, Nakaschit nahamasmiti pratyeti. There is no one in this Jagat that says, I don't exist today. No one says that, right? And Bhagavad then writes, if you are wondering who is actually existing, whoever is asking this question is who is existing. You got the question about whether you exist or not, right? The person who asked this question is the person who exists. So that is how it has been explained. An even more humorous example has been given here, that if you say the words, does my tongue exist? And you wonder whether the tongue is there or not, it is of the same nature of this question. So, yasmin asti loke bodha tattad upekshane yad bodha matram tad brahmetyevam dhihi brahmanishchayaha. So then, how do we, so now we will say, okay, we don't doubt that Brahman exists, and we will also accept that everything exists because of Brahman. But how do I single it out? The answer lies in the question. In whatever you have cognized, get rid of the object. What is left will be Brahman. So if you say the tree exists, get rid of the tree. Exists, ashte, experience is Brahman. That is, yasmin asti loke bodha. Bodha is a cognition. Every cognition that is there in the loka, yasmin asti iti bodha. In whatever object you are perceiving asti. Ghataha asti. So in the ghata, this concept of existence is being perceived. The pataha asti, the cloth exists. In the cloth, the aspect of existing is being perceived. Tad upekshane. In whatever existence is being perceived, if you set aside, upekshana means to put it aside. If you set that aside, in whatever existence is perceived, if you set that aside, what will be left? Tad bodha matram. The experience itself will be left. See, what is an object that is experienced? There is an object of experience. If you get rid of the object, experience is left. So, if you set that aside, yad bodha matram, tad brahmetyevam, that bodha matra, the experience alone, bereft of the object, is Brahman. That is what is being told. So, that is the point of this Panchakosha Viveka. That is how he is bringing it back around. Panchakosha parityage sakshi bodha avasheshataha swaswarupam sa eva syat shunyatvam tasya durghatam. This is where obviously the Advaitin differs from the Bauddha. Because what the Bauddha says is, again, you will Mayavadam Asatshastram Prachannam Bodhamishyate. You have heard this statement? Common statement. Somewhere in the Padma Purana it is that Mayavada is Asatshastra. It is a very bad Shastra, it is Prachanna Bauddha. First of all, when Vyasa Maharshi wrote the Puranas, the Bauddhas were there or not itself is a doubt. Right, so number one. Number two, Mayavada means Jiva Brahmaikya. This also nowhere Vyasa Maharshi has said. So how this is being used to interpret that the school of Advaita is actually Bauddha, we are all very confused about. Let that be. But this is where the...
Bauddha Tattva was there, not the general Buddha.
Exactly. So now this is where the Advaitin differs from the Bauddha, wherein the Bauddhas are what we call Vijnana. There are many schools within them, but one particular school, the Vijnanavadins, Vaijnanikas are called. So what they say is, there is no object outside of perception. That is to say, there is a pot here, the pot is perceived, a perception of the pot has come. However, there is obviously also an object of that perception. They say that this object has no independent existence outside of its perception. The mental picture that you have formed of it is the object. There is no separate object outside the thought. That is the Vijnanavada. And then they say that obviously this thought is fleeting. So once the thought goes, then nothing is left. So they will point it back to Shunya. So this concept of Shunya comes. This is where the Advaitin differs, wherein we say that when we agree that the pot goes, but there is an object that has perceived the pot. How can that go? In the next lecture we will see that we will also accept that actually there is no pot aside from how you view the pot. But to say that besides that nothing is there is not possible, because there must be a constant witness to all of this who is undertaking this perception that is not of the nature of nescience, abhava, but it is a bhava rupa padartha. It is an existent object. So it is actually a massive difference, which is why in the Sutra Bhashya also, in any philosophical text, the biggest opponent will be the person who is closest. That is the Shastric nature. No, it is actually a very good point, because whoever is closest to you also shares your views of everyone else. Right? So if someone has come first in a race, the person who has come second, that is why it is enough if you want to win a race, you only have to defeat one person, the person who comes second in the race. If you defeat that person, you will win the race. Right? There is one story also. Two friends are walking in the forest. They see a lion. Unfortunately, the lion also saw them. They seeing the lion is not a problem. The lion seeing them is a problem. So one of them is calmly sitting down and tying his shoelaces. The friend is, "Are you mad? That thing is running faster than both of us combined." He says, "I don't have to run faster than the lion. I have to run faster than you." In this way, you don't have to defeat everyone in a race. If you defeat the second place person, that is enough. You will win the race. In the same way, in Shastra also, not everyone will be your primary opponent. There will be someone who is mostly correct. And the way that he explains himself in regard to that, we will say okay to. Wherever we differ from him is the final crux of the matter. Which is why in Vedanta, in Bhagavad Sutra, if it was the case that Advaita and Bauddha were more or less the same thing, the primary opponent in the Sutra Bhashya should have been the Bauddha. But we all know it was not the Bauddha, it was never the Bauddha. It was the Sankhya, because the Sankhya has come this close to Vedanta, that the Purusha is Nirlepa, Prakriti does all of this. Right? The only difference is that they say that there are many Purushas, and that Purusha is not doing anything, Prakriti is working on its own, not compelled by... This small 2 or 3 minutiae are there wherein we differ from it. But it is that way, the first from the get-go, Ikshatarna Shabdam, once the Chatusutri is done, the first attack is on the Sankhya only. So the point is, because the Sankhya is actually the closest to the Vedantin, he becomes our primary opponent, not the Bauddha. Because the nature of the Atma, the Vedanta is meant to discuss the Atma that exists. The second you have a philosophy that says that there is actually no permanent Atma, it is actually very far removed from what you are saying. So that is where the Vedantin differs from the Bauddha. That is why Shunyatvam tasya durghatam. Vidyaranya, you cannot say that this Atma is Shunya. You have to say it exists, because Panchakosha parityage. Once you get rid of the Panchakoshas, that is in the previous shloka, the object of perception, there is sakshi bodhava sheshata. There is someone who is witnessing all of this that remains. Right? Once there is a witness in a case who has seen some murder happen, by the time the body goes, the witness is still there. Right? So in the same way, once the panchakosha comes and goes, there is someone who is consistently being the same cognizer through all of this. Right? One more problem that we have with saying that this Atma is of the nature of this kshanika perception is that the ability to cognize something later on and then remember something also becomes tough to explain, because you have seen something now. 2 years later, you are remembering it. If the Atma has gone, then there should be no connection between the perception of today and the perception of 2 years ago. There can only be a connection between these two if you accept that there is something that has spanned this entire time. Only if something has existed in this time period will there be something that can connect experiences that are 2 years apart. If you say that every second or every perception, the perceiver is also changing, then there cannot be a perceiver who can remember something. If you say that no, there is a samskara that is coming through, where is this samskara coming? Or then this conglomeration of samskaras will have to be this. It becomes a very messy situation to fix. So rather than this, just say that there is a buddhi that is the instrument of perception. Perception itself is lasting. So in this way it becomes much easier to explain once you accept that there is a sakshi to all objects of perception. That is swaswarupam sa evasya. So the witness to all of this is your own nature. Shunyatvam tasya durghatam. It is impossible to say that it doesn't exist. Right? That is why after that, swasatvam natu kasmaichid rojate vibramam vina ata eva shrutihi badham brute cha asatva vadinaha. See, first of all, even what we want is to exist. No one says, I wish I didn't exist. Right? We are quite fond of the fact that we exist. So that is why, without the fact that here rochate does not just mean to be fond of, it means ishyate means not just desire, but the way it is perceived. No one says that I did not exist at some point. The only problem is that our sense of existence is tied to this body, which is why Krishna had to hit Arjuna in the head and said, nachaiva na bhavishyamaha sarve vayamatah param. You are worrying that you will kill them and they will not exist after that. That is not the case. Natvevaham jatunasam natvam neme janadhipaha. It is not the case that I never exist, nor you, nor these people. Nachaiva na bhavishyamaha. It is neither the case that we will not exist in the future. Sarve vayamatah param. Right? All of us henceforth. Then here Bhagavad wrote one thing. Why did Bhagavan use Bahuvachana? Why did he say Vayam? If the entire point of Gita is to give jnana, and of course later on Bhagavan says jnani tvatmaiva mematam, then he says kshetrajnyan chapi maam vidhi sarva kshetra. If this is the point, then why did Bhagavan use Bahuvachana? Why did he say we will never cease to exist? He should have said I or you or this. Why did he say we? We implies multiplicity. Bhavishyamaha implies the future. So even in the future multiplicity persists. Is this not the meaning that is coming? Bhagavad simply resulted by saying Deha idam bahuvachanam Deha viprayena natu Atma viprayena. Because Arjuna is staring at the bodies of everyone. That is what he is confused about. If Bhagavan says this, he will say this means the army, because army is one. This means the army. No, that is not. These people that you are seeing, as the Atma, they will persist. So rather than say, Bhagavan says, whatever their true nature is, that will not go. So the Bahuvachana is just because the Dehas are there, not because Atmas are many. So in this way, the thing that persists cannot be it cannot have multiplicity, and it must be existent. This is the thing that is there. So the fact that we exist is something that we all know. But if someone says that you do not exist, because the Bauddha is indeed saying that, right? At the end of the day, Bauddha is saying that whatever the nature of my Atma is, it is something that is not absolutely existent, is what he is saying. Then what is that the case? Vibramam vina, besides being deluded or besides improperly perceiving what the nature of existence is, no one will ever be able to say that I do not exist. You are saying this. Does Veda say this? Ata eva shrutihi brute. That is why the Veda also says what? Badhancha asatvavadinaha. Anyone who says that the Atma does not exist, Shruti has cast him aside. Because where does Shruti say this? Asti brahmeti ched veda santamenam tato viduriti. If he understands the Atma is existent, Brahma asti ched veda. if he understands the Atma to be as Asti, then Santamenam Tato Viduhu, then they call him a Satpurusha. Sat, he is referred to as a Satpurusha. Otherwise, he is obviously the corners also follows. So that is why someone who says that it is Asat Brahmeti Ched Veda Swayameva Bhaved Asat. Asanneva sa bhavati Asat Brahmeti Veda Chet Asti Brahmeti Ched Veda Santamenam Tato Viduriti is the line. Exactly that line. If you see, if now Asat what is it? Asanneva sa bhavati Asat Brahmeti Veda Chet is the Upanishadic line. Look at the shloka. Asat Brahmeti Ched Veda Swayamevam Bhaved Asat. The same words are nicely just fit into a shloka. So if someone says that Brahman does not exist, Brahman means Atma. If the Atma Padartha does not exist, he is given a title by Shruti as Asat. Right? In fact, in one more place it also says, Natasya Vachyapi Bhago Asti. Yadegam Shrunot Yalakagam Shrunot. Natasya Vachyapi Bhago Asti means even he is not even worthy of being referred to by words. Vachi, in speech, tasya bhagaha, a part he does not asti, he does not even have that, in the sense that he is not, do not even talk about him. He is not even worthy of being discussed, is what Veda says. So the point is that you must accept that there is an Atma whose nature is existence, and that existence is an absolute one, not a temporary one. Right? That is why absolute existence is also one thing that we have to talk about. That is the difference between Sat and Mithya. Mithya does not mean non-existent. Mithya means temporary existence, which is different from Sat, which is absolute existence. Right? Atma is exactly this. Nachasita na nabhavishyamaha. That whatever Bhagavan said, that it is not that we never existed, it is not that we will never cease to exist. This is the Paramarthika Sat. When we say Satya, this is what we mean. Anything other than this that is still perceived is counted as Mithya, because it exists not permanently. That is what we call Mithya is impermanent existence. This we have to be very clear about. Because otherwise, if we say that it is non-existence, this is a improper definition, because non-existent means you should not be able to interact with it. Obviously, even the Advaitin is interacting with the Jagat. There is a saying in Telugu, Gajam Mithya, Palayanam Mithya. You have heard this? So when Acharya is doing Advaita Pravachana, Mithya, everything is Mithya, I am Mithya, you are Mithya, tree is Mithya, book is Mithya, Patha is Mithya, Vedanta is Mithya. He did big Mithya Pravachana. When Dvaiti is waiting for a chance, when elephant came down that road, everyone, including this Vedanta Acharya and his students, ran. He called him later. Elephant is Mithya. Why did you run? He said, running is also Mithya. Simple answer. If the elephant is Mithya, my running is also Mithya. Hence proved. Jokes aside though, the point is that you cannot deny interaction with the Jagat. So it is not that the Jagat is denied existence wholly. We are just saying that it is not absolute because there is a point in which it is not existing. And it is not like we are unaware of this. Right? The people who gave birth to us are not, their bodies are not existing at a certain point in our lives. The people whom we got this body from, their bodies are not staying. So we cannot even say that our parents are permanent. How will we say that this entire Jagat is permanent? So the entire point is that there are three types of things. Complete existence, that means past, present and future, it will always exist. Complete non-existence, past, present and future, it never existed. There is something in the middle wherein it existed only for a point of time. Then that is what we are calling Mithya. So why does it only exist for a point of time? What differentiates this from that which never existed? Means this got its existence from something. What did it get its existence from? That which always existed. Which is why Jagat is Mithya, imposed on Brahman. It is that is how simple the proposition is. Right? There is no logical trickery that is needed to explain this. It is quite simple. Something exists temporarily, therefore existence cannot be natural to it, therefore the existence must have come from something, where it comes, that thing which is always existing. It is this simple. So that is why if you say that this being the case, if you say that that object wherein this Jagat derives its existence from does not exist, you are given the title as Asat by the Veda. So therefore, Ataha asya mabhut vedyatvam swasatvam to abhyupagamyatam. That is the nature of this. I think we do have to give a small break here. That is why to sum up what it is avedyopyaparokshaha ataha swaprakasho bhavatyayam. It is avedya, it is not an object of perception, but it is aparoksha. Paroksha means, we have two words in Vedanta. Paroksha and Pratyaksha. Paroksha means para aksha. It is experienced as different through the indriyas. Sorry. It is experienced through someone else's indriyas. For example, sound. Someone tells me that there is a tree there. My indriyas have not interacted with the tree. His indriyas have seen the tree and he is telling me. So this is paroksha. Pratyaksha means my own indriyas are fetching the information for me. Brahman is neither one of these. In the sense that it will not be the object of perception through the indriyas. But obviously existence is also perceived. How? That is why it is aparoksha. It is not experienced through any other indriya. It is not pratyaksha because it is not experienced by the indriyas. So it is also not paroksha. So we have termed it as aparoksha. We don't call it pratyaksha, we will call it aparoksha. That is the explanation that is given here. That is why although it is not the object of knowledge, avedyopi aparokshaha ataha swaprakasha. Therefore it is self-effulgent. It does not derive its being cognized from anything else. It itself is the nature of consciousness and therefore cognized, is what is being told. That is why satyam jnanam anantam cheti astiha brahma lakshanam. That is why that is there. Simple. The last two shlokas we will look at actually, because that is quite nice here. So apaniteshu murteshu. So space is what he is taking as the object, right? Let us even take this space of this hall. There is space within this hall. How do you point out the space? You get rid of everything that is in this. You take all the chairs outside. We all go outside. These mats go outside. Then you say what is left inside is space. Right? If I say what is here is space, you say the chairs are also here. Is the chair also space? No. Put the chair outside. These people are sitting here. Are the people also space? No. Put the people outside. This camera is also space. Okay. Is it space? No. Put the camera outside. Once everything is cleared out, what is here? Is this space? This is no space. In the same way, once you get rid of everything that is an object of perception, only perception will be left. That will be the Atma. So, this is all. Let us skip through the end. One last thing that we'll talk about is Brahma is called as Ananta. He said Satyam Jnanam Anantam, right? Satyam, Brahman's nature of existence we have discussed. Jnanam also we have discussed. In the sense of how is Brahman cognition. Anantam is one thing that we have to discuss. Anantam means unbounded. Bounds, the word for bound in Shastra is Paricheda. Parichedas are of three kinds. Desha Paricheda, Kala Paricheda, Vastu Paricheda. Things are bounded by time, place and object. In Sanskrita, there are three abhavas here. Atyanta bhava, praga bhava and anyonya bhava. Prag and pradhamsa, you can put them together. But anyonya and atyanta, there are three types of abhavas. So, atyanta bhava means the pot is not here. The pot is not here. The lack of this pot is called atyanta bhava. Pot is not a cloth. It is different from a cloth, means it is not a cloth. So that kind of an abhava is called anyonya bhava. Praga bhava means the pot is not here now but it will be. Pradhamsa bhava is the pot is here now but it will not be. So basically non-existence in the past or future. So these three are the bounds. The pot is not here. This atyanta bhava is the desha paricheda. Here in this place the pot is not there. So the desha paricheda is the atyanta bhava. Then anyonya bhava is the vastu paricheda. The pot is not the cloth. It is defined by another object. Then kala paricheda is the praga bhava and pradhamsa. The pot is here but it will not be, or the pot is not there now but it will be. If we put this aside, Brahman is not bounded by object because it is sarvavyapi. Na vyapitva deshataha na deshataha antaha. So because Brahman pervades everywhere, you cannot say that it does not exist in a particular place. So it is not bounded by place. Nityatvat napi kalataha. Because it is nitya, it is not bounded by time. Then na vastutaha sarvatmyat. Because it itself is the root of everything, right? We talked about the vikara object in the beginning. Because from Brahman, like just as from the mud the pot came, in the same way, because from Brahman the jagat came, there is no object that is separate from it. Right? There is no part of the pot that is separate from mud. In the same, there is no part of an ornament that is separate from gold. In the same way, there is no part of the jagat that is separate from Brahman. Right? So then what is the difference? Then can we say that gold is a necklace? There is a difference between saying that the necklace is gold and saying that gold is a necklace. The first sentence is true, the second is not. Which is why we can say that Brahman is the Jagat. You cannot say that the Jagat is Brahman. Right? So what part of the Jagat is not Brahman? The Nama Rupa. Just as when we say that the gold necklace is gold is okay, but gold is necklace means gold is not always in the name, or have the name necklace, and it is not always in the form of a necklace. Everything else between the necklace and gold is the same. In the same way, when you say that the Jagat is Brahman, you cannot say this because the names and the forms present in the Jagat are not always present in Brahman. But Brahman is the Jagat, just as the gold is always the ornament. So that is there. So Navastutaha, there is no Vastu Bheda also. There is nothing that you can say, this is different from Brahman. You cannot say that at all. Sarvatmyat Anantyam Brahmani Tridha. Therefore, Brahman is Ananta in three ways. So this is why that Advaita ends up talking about Jiva Brahmikya. So it is not that we wish to say that Ishvara is actually not important. It is not that we wish to say that I am like God. These are not the reasons why we say why Advaita holds. It is a simple logical proposition that you have to postulate a singular cause. If Paramatma and Jiva are Anadi, that means that you have two independent causes. This position is not tenable. So you have to have one cause. That one cause you call it Brahman. Then that cause acts in two different ways, Ishvara and Jiva. When it acts in its supreme capacity, call it Ishvara. When it acts in a very limited capacity, you call it the Jiva. So that is why the Jiva is never Ishvara. Right? This is also one thing that you have to be very clear about. That Advaita does not say that Jiva is Ishvara. It is Jiva Brahmaikya, not Jiva Ishvaraikya. Jiva is the same as this Brahman, not Ishvara. Right? So because this is acting in the capacity of being omnipotent. The Jiva is acting in the capacity of being limited. These two cannot be the same because the capacity is different. You remove the capacity, what is left is one. That is the point. So it is because there is one singular cause of everything. Right? That is why even when talking about Atma in the Vedas, you will never say that there were 10 things in the beginning, but only one of them was the cause of everything else. Right? That is not how Veda presents this entire cosmos. It says, Sadeva Somya Eka Idamagra, there was Ekameva, there was only one thing. There was one thing that became the source of everything else. There was not one thing with 10 other things, but only this was the cause for everything else. Right? So you cannot, that is why it is, logically the position is that there is one cause. Whatever you point to, you have to trace it back to that. If it is fleeting, you trace it back to its Shakti of Maya. That is why Nama Rupa is Maya. If it is something that is existent, you trace it back to its Svabhava of Satyam Jnanam Anantam. But you have to trace it back to one thing, that is Brahman. From this multiplicity, from that Ishvara, Jivas, whatever you want, you call it that. From it multiplicity comes. One multiplicity comes, it is called Ishvara. That is how we have to understand it. So this fact remains that because Brahman is not limited in these three ways, you have to trace anything that is limited by these three back to Brahman. So then, why do we then even make the point of distinguishing between Jiva, Ishvara, Kotastha? Why is all of this coming? Pita, Tachakyupadhi Sanyogat Brahma Eva Ishvaratam Vrajet. When Brahman says, okay, I will take upon my Maya to do something, then you are calling it Ishvara. Koshopadhi Vivakshayam, when that same Chaitanya is sitting within the koshas, then Yati Brahmaiva Jivatam. When Brahman sits in its own Shakti and says, I will use it, you are now calling it Ishvara. When that same Chaitanya is being viewed as limited by a particular set of koshas, you are now calling it the Jiva. But then, is this the same or one thing? Then, Pitamahas Chaikaha, Putra Pautrau Yatha Prati. The one person is a father, he is also a grandfather. How can that be? Definition of a father is someone who has a son. Definition of a grandfather is someone's father's father. How can these two be there? Means, with regards to the son, he is a father. With regards to the grandson, he is a grandfather. In the same way, Brahman, with regards to the entire Jagat is Ishvara. With regards to the Panchakoshas is Jiva. It is that simple. That way, Tadvan Nesho Napi Jivaha Shakti Kosha Avivakshane. When you are not interested in talking about how Brahman is using Maya, or when you are not interested in talking about how Chaitanya is delineated by the Panchakoshas, then there is no Ishvara and no Jiva. Then it is only Brahman. It is this simple. So that is the ya evam Brahma Veda. Whoever understands Brahma like this, he will become Brahma eva bhavati swayam. Brahmavid Brahma eva bhavati. Now we get the question, why did these panchakoshas even come? Because see, Ishvara only must have made these panchakoshas also. The Jiva did not create the panchakoshas. Ishvara must have made them. So what is Ishvara's role in this and what is Jiva's role in this? That we will see in a short lecture after a small break.